Good morning and welcome. So I'm here on behalf, as Megan mentioned, the Yale Review, which is what we like to call ourselves the oldest literary quarterly in America, which is sort of true, which is housed here at Yale. For over 2 centuries, we've published the best thinkers and writers of our time, and I'd like to think we're continuing to do that. And I guess for 6 years now, those thinkers and writers have included recipients of the Windham Campbell Prize. So we've, for 6 years in a row now, done essentially a kind of collaborative issue with the Windham Campbell Prize recipients. And so if you look at our new issue, which just recently came out, all of which is online, but also you can see the beautiful print edition, you will find new work from each of this year's prize winners, alongside work from previous recipients and the like. I think you can find copies on the back tables, and please subscribe if you get a chance. There is information about how to do that, I think, inside each copy. The other thing about the Yale Review is that we are a home for students who want to learn more about editing and writing and publishing, or who want to be involved with those things. So we run a very robust reading program for undergrads generally, although graduate students can participate as well, where you actually get to read our submissions and weigh in on them and help us filter them. And we also offer fellowships for both undergraduates and graduates, and you can just go to yalereview.org to learn more about that. I'd also say that we are in the midst of accepting submissions for this month, so if you have something you want to send us, please do. You can go to our website, and there's a way to do it there. And this is the 3rd year in a row where we have hosted these kind of morning wake-ups. I mean, it's 10:30, so I think we're all woken up, but they're really meant to be very informal. So this is the questions will be not necessarily well. They maybe won't be as heavy as I wanted them to be. As I was watching the videos, one thing I would recommend, by the way, is each of the recipients did a short video that you can find about themselves and their work. That you can find it on YouTube, and I think they're excellent. It's like they're about 2 minutes each, but they're really they're wonderfully done, and I also think they're just very interesting and they really make you want to engage. So, in any case, roughly 15 minutes apiece, and each of the conversations will end with you'll see a kind of a little gimmicky question, it'll be fun and I hope interesting. So today we're going to hear from 4 writers, Anthony Vani Capildeo, Roy Williams, Matilda Faye-Shayo, and Patricia J. Williams. I actually did not read those in the order in which they're going to come up, but that's okay. We're going to start now, and we're going to start with Anthony Vani Capildeo. So Anthony is a Trinidadian Scottish writer of poetry and nonfiction. They are a writer in residence and professor at the University of York. You're a professor of what?
It was just a promotion that went through the normal internal promotion process. So it's professor because I published lots of things. So,
but is it in a department, or is it just?
It's in the Department of English and Related Literature,
okay,
which is really one of the best departments I've ever worked in anywhere.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, great. So Anthony, in the new issue, you have, is it 4 poems or 3 poems?
I'm not awake.
Okay. Anyway, it's a series of poems under the title sort of fighting words. So it's really wonderful work. And one of the poems I'll just mention is about a broken heater, which I connected with very closely because a few years ago our heating system went out in the middle of winter, basically. So anyway, one of the things you say in your video is you talk about language. You say language is funny. And so can you share an early memory, if you have one, of your sort of fascination with language? I mean, did you know from very early on that you wanted to be a poet, or you wanted to be do something where you were able to be playing with language?
I didn't really think that a poet was something to be. I thought that poetry was something that people did. And because I grew up in Trinidad in the Caribbean, I grew up in an extraordinary mix of literary and oral cultures. So really, if you read the Caribbean writers of the 1950s, the great writers like George Lamming and Samuel Sullivan and Una Marston and others, then the richness of the language you see there is really just what you hear walking down the street.
Wow.
So I was also fascinated by rhyme. I think nowadays I would have all sorts of diagnoses, but in those days I was just an odd child. And my mother kept a notebook where I remember being told I didn't have to do any drawing because I was so terrible at it. And this was at the age of 2.
At the age of 2?
Yes, I was told by my Montessori teacher, don't worry, because she had given us a thing to copy. We still have the notebook where there's my attempt to draw a picture. And next to it, she gave me a rhyme to copy out, but I got so wildly excited that I capitalized all the rhyme words, like to market, yeah.
It's amazing. That's
I
fascinating.
know. I'm sorry for my teachers in retrospect. Yeah.
The rhyming thing is fascinating. My mother is a teacher, and she used to teach little kids, and she would talk about how little kids don't rhyme. Not everyone rhymes automatically, recognizes rhymes automatically. So you could say, what rhymes with car? And they might say, like, cat. And I was just like, a very interesting idea that rhyme is something that you can oftentimes have to learn, essentially, in a way, I thought. When did you discover poetry per se? Like, when did you decide this was something you could, in fact, do or be?
Well, my father wrote poems a lot. He was a poet, though there wasn't, and there still isn't, a large publishing house industry in the Caribbean, partly to do with underdevelopment and the neo-colonial blocking of trade routes between the islands, which means it's actually easier to get published in New York or Leeds by Akashic Books or People Tree Press than it would be to get in the West Indies.
Right.
And also, in terms of getting things between islands, it's easier to get a suitcase full of books than to have things distributed by Central Books. So this is quite an odd situation. So while my father did what would nowadays be considered self-publishing, that was legitimate publishing in Trinidad of the 1970s and 80s. And he did small pamphlets of poems that would turn up in places like hotel shops, very odd places. You never knew where they would turn up.
How would he print them? Would he print them himself, or?
No, there were small printing presses.
Okay.
This is why I say it would be called vanity publishing, but it wasn't. It was just the means available. And we didn't appreciate it at the time, but these are works of great archival value because the people who were running these presses paid a lot of attention to things like paper stock, inlaid printing, beautiful colors of ink. So they were just what people did, but now I can see them with later eyes. These are art objects being produced for everyday use.
Wow. Your poems have a very strong sort of sonic presence, and I know you're talking to Lanny later about sort of soundscapes. You can sort of hear the rhythms of them when you read them. This is sort of a broad question, but how do you think about sound in your work and the relationship of sound to your work?
One of the things that when I'm writing, I'm not necessarily thinking. For me, thinking is part of the editorial process. If I am thinking, I'm usually writing nonfiction instead, because it's an idea I want to express. Whereas in the process of composing a poem, I'm often listening. And poems sometimes arrive simply as rhythms without words, or sometimes as a kind of weave of voices and sounds, or I want to suggest a shimmer of sounds, or occasionally another language, either woven in or shining through. But another thing is that I often get overwhelmed by having to communicate, so I can go a bit nonverbal at home. And when I was a teenager, I used to say I lose the faculty of human speech. And I used to announce to people I am about to lose the faculty of human speech. And then for the rest of the day, I would just go.
That's it.
But I've managed to incorporate that into my poetic practice in my creature poems. So sometimes they're nonsense poems in between creatures. And the way I arrange my collections or my books, often I deliberately have something quite dense, which you have to think about at the conscious level. Then after that, in a bit like a musical arrangement or theatre or a medieval arrangement, there'll be one of these creaturely poems or something very musical. So if you do read the books in order, you'll pass from high articulacy through losing the faculty of human speech.
Do you ever, or maybe, I don't know, would you write the poems out loud ever? Do you speak them as you are writing them, or?
Yes, I mean, I mutter them, and also, or I make sounds, I walk around, or a nest, I build little nests in my bedroom to my mother's horror. And I always do have to write longhand with a pencil.
Oh, really?
Yes, and when I look at something I try to teach my students is to engage materially, so it's not just a question of not deleting your drafts, but collect the objects around you. I was mentoring during the pandemic a wonderful emerging poet called Carlos Mauricio Rojas, and I noticed that the thing that gave Carlos great joy during the pandemic lockdowns was cultivating plants. And so I would ask at every mentoring session, how are your pot plants doing? And gradually they were more and more. It started looking like a set of little shop of horrors. And now Carlos is actually doing a certificate in horticulture alongside writing poems. And I think that these things, these material engagements, feed our work as practitioners of literature. It has to be an embodied practice.
Yeah. So connected to what you were just talking about in terms of losing the faculty of speech, one of the things you say, I think it's might be in the interview you did for our issue, but you say poetry is fighting for the right to remain silent.
Ooh.
What does that mean? That's really fascinating. That's a fascinating concept.
The editorial process at the Yale Review is a wonderful process of mutual learning, where your editors were really asking me quite searching questions, and we were exchanging a lot of information in the notes.
Yeah.
So what eventually emerged in the interview is very much dialogic. And I'm not a great person for saying things like poetry is, or I am the kind of person who, and I realized we needed some sort of conclusive thing that people could take away. And I wanted to have this sort of dynamic between the idea of fighting, which is dynamic, and silence, because people often think of silence in terms of oppression, or being stilled, or being shut away. But I was thinking about the right not to have to perform identity. So that was a very situated remark, that you have the right not to declare for this or for that. You have the right not to sign up to divisions that people are co-opting you for. You have the right to lose the faculty of human speech and just be a creature among your fellow creatures.
In the video for Windham Campbell, you said something I thought was fascinating, which was you said that you think of yourself, or maybe you would describe yourself as religious but not spiritual, which is really interesting, because I think a lot of, at least in America, you hear a lot of people say exactly the opposite, right? They're spiritual but not religious. So what does religious but not spiritual mean?
Well, there are three things I'll tell you. One is a very bad joke, because I really enjoy being single, and I really enjoy being celibate, because I get to sleep and don't have to cook, and I've got lots of plushies, and I don't have to make the bed. And when I was younger, friends used to encourage me to sign up to dating apps. And there was one particular dating app where you had to answer questions like, what do you like to eat? Are you more meat and potatoes person, or do you like Eastern food? I thought, oh no, I eat all the things. I'm undateable. And then, and it's similarly, it's like, are you religious, or are you spiritual?
Is that was one of the questions?
Are you spiritual? How would you describe yourself? Extremely religious. I thought, no, I don't want anybody to go to hell. Are you spiritual but not religious? No, I don't have any tarot cards. So the whole thing was really terrible. And I just decided it's safer not to date. And so the second thing about religious but not spiritual, I know people have had terrible experiences with institutionalized religion, and I believe there's a heretic and violent use being made of Christianity at the moment, which I will happily talk about without being representative of any church or order. I can talk about it as an individual. No, we're not supposed to kill our neighbors as a way of hastening God's plan. No. And that's nowhere. Love your neighbor. And not love them to death, right? And then the third thing is spiritual but not religious. That because I'm trained as a medievalist, I think people often adopt the nice bits of what they like everything is like the lovely breakfast buffet we have down there, or brunch buffet, or whatever it is. So it's like, okay, I want this pagan god, but I don't want the human sacrifice bit. Or, I want to have these colored beads, but I want to wear them any day. I don't want to respect that this goes with this planet and I can only wear it on this day. So I want the license, I don't want the taboos. I want the power, I don't want the transaction. I want the name, I don't want the etymology. I'm not interested in that. Yeah.
In the video you say, it's almost as if I'm never not writing.
Yes.
Are you writing right now as well?
Of course I'm writing.
So the last thing I'll ask is, we're going to ask you all to choose a category. I'll give you 4 categories. You pick, and then I'll just ask you a question off of the categories. So the categories are favorites, lasts, firsts, or nevers.
Nevers.
Ooh, okay. Huh, this is interesting.
I never have a category, I always have a doggegory.
Wait, I'm sorry, what?
I never have a category, I always have a doggegory.
Right. So what is something you would never want to write about that you nonetheless feel you might be pushed or expected to write about?
My own uterus.
Do you want to just leave it there?
Actually, I'd quite like to whip it out, but that's a different conversation. Go on. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. Thank you very much. Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
Next, we are going to talk, or I am going to talk, with Patricia J. Williams. So. Okay.
Well, that's
So-
a hard act to follow.
Yeah, it is. So Patricia Williams is University Distinguished Professor of Law and Humanities at Northeastern University and James L. Dorr Professor of Law Emerita at Columbia Law School. Her most recent book is The Miracle of the Black Leg, Notes on Race, Human Bodies, and the Spirit of the Law. She's also written some of the most important books in, I would say, legal and certainly critical race theory. Let me find my questions. I'm sorry. Okay. So the piece you wrote for us is a piece about the implications of AI, both in a broader sense and then also the potential implications of the use of AI in the courtroom. And I thought maybe we could just start with the last part because it's the strangest part.
Yeah.
So you, in the piece, write about this thing that I still can't believe actually happened, honestly, where the victim of a crime, a dead victim, someone who had been murdered in in a road rage incident, his sister essentially created an AI avatar of him and wrote the words she thought he would speak, and this avatar spoke in the courtroom, and actually in this case was asking for forgiveness, I guess, in theory, for the person who had killed him.
For the defendant.
So first, just a little of the backstory. How did you find? I had missed this. How did you find out about it? And then if you read the piece, you'll get a sense of it. Can you talk about what you think the implications of this are? And
Sure. I mean, I found out of it because I am a constant doom scroller.
Oh, you are a doom scroller. Okay.
And I think there's a
many of us.
homophily in the algorithm that feeds me all the Gothic lore that is occurring on the planet at any one time.
Yes.
But I'm also a lawyer, so this was a legal case.
Yeah.
And I think it was, if not in the public eye, to a great extent, it will be shortly as a kind of phenomenon.
Yeah.
But among lawyers, it was extremely controversial because you have an AI bot, essentially, or an AI avatar, doing something which, is testimonial.
Yeah.
And the whole meaning of testimony sort of assumes a kind of human autonomy and a voice and we associate that with a quality of, deliberative justice.
Yeah.
And what happens when you're deliberating with this artificial creation? And we do this. There are all kinds of legal fictions, like corporations,
Right.
and that creates its own ontological
Right.
problems, as we know. But this was remarkable for the judge saying it is so unique to have the voice of the decedent in the
That's
courtroom.
so
And I'm saying, well, it's not the voice of the decedent.
Right.
And so that raises the ethics of what is it that we are attributing voice to?
Yeah.
And what is, testimony is all about truth. And,
it wasn't even his words, right?
No,
it
wasn't
wasn't
his
as
words.
if
It
the
was-
sister had taken his writing or
No,
recordings or whatever.
Well, yes, she'd taken the sound of his
His
voice.
voice,
It's
sure,
what's
but it
happening,
wasn't
yeah.
as if he had written this down somewhere
No,
or,
no,
or
no, no.
spoken this. Yeah.
And she basically has described it as, I know that this is what he would have said. And I think it would have been a completely different ethical issue if she had testified, if she, the human, had testified, this is what my brother would have said.
Right.
But this habit of creating a vision and attributing to it a kind of agency, I think is built into all kinds of other situations. So I'm
interesting.
also writing about the BBC, which has a program called Maestro, and it has recreated Agatha Christie, who died in 1975.
Yes.
And she teaches, this AI version of her teaches her work.
And it's a fiction writing seminar.
It's a fiction writing seminar, but it's also the sort of the apology for doing this is that her family, her nephews and grandchildren, have said it's fine. This is what she would have wanted. And one of my concerns is that these AI constructions don't really present this as would have said.
Yeah.
There is no conditional in it. It's the elimination of the subjunctive.
Yeah.
And it makes the putative some sort of truth present. And that's a habit of thought into which we're being acculturated, and I worry about AI's cultural norm changing power.
So the class, I'll just read the description of the class. In a world first, the best-selling novelist of all time offers you an unparalleled opportunity to learn the secrets behind her writing in her own words. So you're like, what? It is. So I want to ask you, though, a kind of a strange question about this, even given that we think this is a terrible idea, and if you had to take a fiction writing seminar from a novelist who is not alive, who would it be? Who would you like to? Is there anyone you would like to do?
You've pushed me against the back of my own ethical
exactly.
sense of what I'm willing to do or not do, and so it's why I don't use AI at all.
Yeah.
But I also find my life as a big struggle not to use AI because it is so incorporated into everything, every tool that we use.
Yeah.
And my school is deeply invested and profiting from AI programs. Every one of my undergraduate students in my philosophy classes has their own startup. And it's,
everyone is it really?
Yes. And so it isn't just the fact of AI, it's also the property implications that these chatbots are actually gathering data.
Yeah.
Even if you feed them or if you're learning from them, they are, your answers to them, your engagement with them is a process of scraping, and whether you're aware of it or not, you become a content provider rather than a creative. And the process of creativity is already under such assault. So I'm terribly against this, and I find it's no problem for me to do the kind of work I do without this. But I also worry that my work is already being scraped, and public libraries are being scraped, the Library of Congress is being scraped, and there's a kind of induced helplessness for.
So I was going to ask you that, but so you don't use it at all? You don't use it for research or anything? Basically.
I only research it.
You only research it?
That involves
right.
dipping my toe in, but it's not the same thing as, if I'm a lawyer, so if I use this, it is also porous.
Yeah.
And so lawyers shouldn't be told, as we are being told, to play with it, to learn to manipulate it.
Yeah.
Because we have fiduciary responsibilities, and there is nothing fiduciarily private about this. Unless you have very sophisticated VPNs, it's open domain.
Yeah.
And people who are using patents or who are discussing patents shouldn't use this because it can be hacked or stolen. People who are in healthcare, if they respect privacy, shouldn't be using this. And yet it's everywhere. They have ambient listening devices now at Mass General Hospital. And they don't even tell patients anymore. And it's supposedly just to help the doctor take notes and to redo it.
Right.
But it's AI in the room. And that's why I have another piece that I'm working on called Silent Witness. It really is being given a kind of role that's invisible and you can't constrain it in particular ways. And it's, and particularly in legal counsel, it's like there's somebody violating the confidentiality requirements of our ethics.
What you're doing.
So
do you talk to your students a lot about, or I don't know a lot, but are you very clear with your students about how you think about how they should use AI? Or is it,
Yeah. No, I make them close their computers just because I don't like the sociality
to see this,
that's a simple. But my students also, we're constantly talking. I teach a course called The Anatomy of Autonomy. And so, the question of autonomy is so implicated in these constructs. And so I learn a lot from my students, but we also are discussing questions of copyright. And they're the ones who informed me, and I think there's a footnote to that effect in my piece. I didn't realize that Biggie has recorded 6 albums since he died.
Right.
But that's also the way in which AI is a property interest that really isn't completely vested in the body.
Yeah.
And when they can scrape the sound and the timbre and the rhythmic structures and break down those patterns and reconstruct them into new albums in the name, it's really the label that then becomes the embodiment. And so what does that, the deceased body of Biggie or Tupac, that I think he's recorded 2 posthumous, or even living recording artists. There's a young man named Anderson Paak who actually is so worried about this phenomenon of being reconstructed posthumously that he has tattooed on his arm, please do not use my music to publish or recreate me after my death.
Right.
And so in my class, we had to have a long discussion about whether that tattoo constitutes a legal instrument, or whether it's like, Aretha Franklin's little slip of paper that was found in the cushions of her sofa, and then is that a goodwill or not?
Right.
And so,
and that was interesting. The Anderson Paak thing is interesting because it obviously sort of raises this issues like with Kafka, right, where he's saying do not publish. But in this case, it's not just don't publish the things that I myself did write or record, but also don't then reconstruct my voice to do X, Y, or Z, and which takes it to a whole other level.
Yeah, and the way in which that's rooted to identity, and I think I cite Derrida. He has a wonderful essay on how his circumcision was a kind of engraving on his body of his identity that told a lot about him. And the use of tattoos, and particularly in youth culture, but that particular tattoo with its very explicit instruction is,
it's really
I think,
fascinating. So I want to actually shift a little bit to, and you mentioned Derrida, that's from Archive Fever, his book, so I want to ask about archives. So you donated to Harvard, to the Schlesinger Library at Harvard, a massive collection of your family letters, papers, writings, photographs. And so I have 2 questions. One, the first is a very personal one. So I, like apparently many of the members of your family, am a pack rat. And so I was wondering, how did it feel when you gave it away? Did you feel was there a sense of lightness that it was no longer physically you had to worry about it? Or did you feel a sense of loss when you gave it away? Even though, of course, you can go visit it whenever you want.
Well, it's so massive that, and they put it away, and I mean, it has to be, sorted.
Sorted and cataloged.
Depositing. I haven't closed it. So I have both a sense of lightness in terms of being able to go into my apartment and not, I literally had 300 boxes in my apartment when we cleared out my family's home. And so, now I have only about 50 left. Okay. But those really are the most personal and the stuff that it does feel like I'm really letting go of something that, symbolically is so close to my heart, and yet I've imbued with a kind of attachment that there's a lot of psychological stuff going on.
I can imagine.
But I actually felt like putting it there was really going to make it safe, and it would last longer than it would in my apartment or in my parents' attic.
Yeah.
You know, some of the stuff was nibbled by squirrels.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm so alarmed by what's happening to archives, because I thought of giving it to the National Archives, and I have a friend who is actually a niece of Marian Anderson.
Oh.
And I'm thinking of the African American History Museum that is under attack now.
Yeah.
And my friend put in the dress I think that she wore when Marian Anderson sang on the stage of the Washington Mall.
Yeah.
And there were so many families where there was no place to put the remnants of slavery. The feed sacks that were given to them by slave mothers whom they had to leave when they were sold down the river.
Yeah.
And so there was little stitching or embroidering with messages or pictures, or rag dolls that were made by slave mothers who were then separated from their children, or manumission papers. And the idea that that's all in that museum, and all that has to happen is for the Doge brothers to turn off the air conditioning in the summer in Washington, D.C., to watch that rot set in.
Yeah.
And the betrayal of that history, the disappearance of those artifacts. There are many ways to erase a history.
Yeah.
And it feels like we're at a really insidious inflection point in terms of what might happen. So, my first archivist actually at the Schlesinger at Harvard had left the Schlesinger, and I said, "Oh, where did she go?" And people initially were saying, "Oh, she got a great job. She's at the Obama Library, the Presidential Library at Obama." And I said, "Oh, great." And then they paused and they said, "She's a federal employee." And so, that's the moment we're in.
Right, because they work for the National, for NARA.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Do your students use the library, physical library?
No. And in fact, one of the problems for librarians, I have a cousin who's a librarian, is that even libraries are not using the physical books. They're somewhere in vaults and you have to order.
Yeah, you have to order
But everything is online.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm very much a passionate, I need the physical.
Do you like the physical?
To turn the pages. My brain is linked to the sensual textures of pages.
Yeah. It's this very paradoxical moment in terms of archives, because on the one hand, so much is online and available, and it's so much easier to access all of this stuff, certainly like in music and things like that, and yet at the same time, there is this kind of, if it isn't online, and that's true of a lot of books even now, it basically doesn't exist. It's as if it never happened.
And that's what, the idea that so much of the printed page is being transferred into cyber vaults.
Yes, yeah.
And the printed evidence, which stays over time and which is, you can go back to, and it doesn't change, is being put into this technology, some of which is becoming obsolete, so it becomes harder to access, but some of which also is under licensing agreements like Audible.com and even Kindle, where they can edit it or update it to sell it better. And so the actual, again, this question of property in new technology, I think is something which hasn't been really confronted in terms of the way in which we are temporarily disordered by much of technology, because you think this is what is on the page and will be forever. But I was reading to my son, a version of The Little Prince, and the French version is very different from the American printed English version, because there's a page in there in which they're describing the value of a house. And in the French, the value of it is really put in terms of some larger, almost spiritual sense of value. And in the English-American version, it's put in terms of dollars and cents. It's really the worth. It's a very transactional. That phrase has been changed from the original.
It's funny because I am still. I have a Kindle and it's full of books, but I still have tons of books, and I still also have tons of Blu-rays, right? Because with film, you never, even if you were to buy it from Amazon or something, you're really leasing it. You're not actually buying it. You're not actually buying it. So, okay, the category question, last one. Favorites, lasts, firsts, or nevers?
Last.
Great question. What is the last thing you read that you loved?
Oh. I think Imani Perry's Up from South. What is it? What is it called?
What's it called?
Down from
Down
up
from the south, not back to the south. Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. It's a story. Her family history of her sort of odd relationship of growing up in New England, where her parents were students in Boston, Cambridge area, but deep roots in the South, and the comparison over time of going back to talk to the communities that she sort of missed but grew up hearing, the power of the narration. That was so much part of what Marion Hirsch might call post-memory. You know, that there were stories that she felt she had lived through but actually hadn't, and so when she went back to confront it, I just thought it was a lovely kind of testament to how complicated we are in our relationship to pasts that we actually haven't lived through but so shape us that makes it feel like we are part of it nonetheless.
Yeah,
so
fascinating.
And that's my relationship to this archive that I'm preserving.
Right, the archive you donate, Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Matilda Feishayo Ibini. Let me get this out of your way. Whoa. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. Matilda Feishayo Ibini is a bionic playwright, screenwriter, and author of Nigerian heritage from London. And in our new issue, it's really quite wonderful. She has an annotated version of a scene from her play Sleepover, which is, it's just a cool text to look at, I think. You can see it on our site. To see a writer kind of commenting on choices they made and all that. It's really quite wonderful. Let me start by asking, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you the question I'm sure you're asked constantly, but I want to ask it because I think people will be interested. Why do you call yourself a bionic?
Yeah, so I started
Playwright.
calling myself bionic actually after a particular surgery I had where they had to implant metal into my knee. And someone said, now I'm part metal, part woman. And I was like, oh yeah, I am kind of now. But actually, I feel like I've only recently adopted that term, but that term does reflect an existence that I've had, that throughout my life, growing up from a disabled child into a disabled adult, I've had some form of technology, aids, adaptations to enable me to move through the world, and in doing so, find myself in the world. So kind of describing myself as bionic describes that existence and an enabled and enhanced existence with technology.
Cool. When did you know you wanted to be a playwright?
I don't think I knew I wanted to be a playwright. One, I didn't know writers were a thing.
Oh,
I didn't know. I just thought, especially textbooks in school. So, for example, for a long time, I thought Shakespeare was still alive. When we were studying plays, I was like, why don't we just get him into school and ask? We're making all these assumptions about what the play might have meant. It was only till I started to piece together in an English class when I was told Shakespeare is not alive, and that someone that he was paid to write these stories, and I didn't know that you could be paid to write stories. That doesn't sound like a real job, right? Like, I'm going to pay you to tell a story.
Yeah.
But once I'd heard that, I couldn't get it out of my mind. There was just something about telling stories, and for a long time, actually. Growing up so I've got a condition called limb girdle muscular dystrophy. It's a muscle weakening and wasting condition. So from very young, I was losing my mobility, losing the ability to walk, climb stairs, things like that. So books and reading became a really big solace for me. Watching films, things that you could do still, became really important to me. And so now I look back, I used to write short stories, which we now call fan fiction. I used to write Scooby-Doo fan fiction.
Scooby-Doo fan fiction? That's awesome.
Which eventually evolved into poetry that wasn't about Scooby-Doo. And then that eventually, when we started learning about plays, and other plays than Shakespeare, because actually I didn't understand Shakespeare for a really long time. And it actually quite annoyed me not being able to understand something until until we watched Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet, and I was like, is that what the play was about? What? Warring families? He doesn't like her, she doesn't like him, but they're in love. That opened up my imagination of like, I think I want to do something like that. So I didn't actually get an opportunity to properly get into theatre till I was in university. We did a module in playwriting, and I was hooked. I was like, you can get people to say things? Oh, this is quite powerful.
That's actually that's really interesting. I've always wondered about that there is something about, what's it like to see people speaking your words on stage?
It's thrilling. Especially when they understand what they're saying, because in the beginning of your career, you're writing lots of you're writing lots of kind of very early, rough stuff, and that's the kind of like training wheels of writing. You're just writing to learn, am I doing this right? Does it make sense? Does the story make sense to me? But when you finally crack it of like, oh, this is how I want to tell stories, or this is how I want to tell this particular story. So when you hear it, there is this kind of like dimension that's added. It's so different from hearing it in my head. So when I'm writing a play, in some ways, when an actor picks it up to perform, they're doing their adaptation of it.
Yeah.
It's not the version in my head, and I'm okay with that.
You're okay with that?
That it's an adaptation of the version in my head. And then when we get a director involved and it becomes a production, then it's an adaptation of everyone's collective imagination for the audience. And then the audience is going to see, because we all come from such different walks of lives, they're all going to see something different in it. So they'll have their own adaptations that they're going to take home of the memory of that production.
Are there moments when you've learned something about your own work from watching a performance, where something an actor does or makes you see, oh, right, that's actually?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like every play I've written, I've always been changed by.
Wow.
The journey in writing that play has meant I'm not the same person I was when I started writing it. And it's also such an uphill battle. I think it is a common misconception people have about writers, that we just kind of spend the day leisurely just writing, eating, watching whatever we want, and then we go to bed and sleep for 10 hours. Like, I wish it was that simple. But it's actually it can take such a mental toll on grappling with your story, the characters, the theme. I sometimes say that I get ideas for plays, but sometimes I realize I've not lived the years I need to live to write the play.
Oh, wow.
So sometimes, and it also takes me a really long time to write plays, but sometimes I've come up with an idea, but I can't write it yet, because I'm like, I have no idea what that means, what it's about. But fast forward sometimes 3 to 5 to maybe a decade later, I know exactly what the play is about now, because I've lived the years I needed to tell this particular story.
Wow, that's amazing. The Romeo and Juliet thing is interesting because I have a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I don't remember that Baz Luhrmann version is one of my favorite films ever. It's incredible. And for some reason, I told them about it a year ago or something, and so they remember it, and they were saying, the swords are guns. They told me the other day, and I said, wait, how do you know that? And they said, you told us. But the 9-year-old really wants to see it. Oh, and I keep being like, I don't know,
it's not for 9-year-olds.
Yeah, exactly. I keep saying, no, I don't think you're ready for it yet. But anyway, at some point, I will show it to him. So you've worked in addition to playwriting, you've also been a screenwriter, and you've also written radio plays, I think?
And
what's that? Can you talk about the differences? What's that like?
So I'd say in the UK it's probably a necessity, because there's no money in playwriting. You do have to learn to write in other mediums, or as some people describe it, have a patchwork career where you're just kind of doing lots of different things. So some were born out of survival, and some were genuine opportunities. And I've always been a lover of film before I was introduced to theatre, but had no idea how you get into film. But playwriting seems to be a very useful pathway in the UK to get into screen.
Oh, that's interesting. Really?
Yeah. Don't know why. It just is. So I always knew one day I wanted to write films, because the first films I was ever introduced, way before the Disneys, way before the Pixars, were Nollywood films. And Nollywood films are definitely not age appropriate, but I've watched hundreds of them with my mum.
Wow.
And a lot of those films, characters, the stories told purely in Yoruba. Though I'm not a fluent speaker, because I grew up on those films, I can somewhat translate a lot of what is being said. And so those films are often very dramatic and also have quite a Shakespearean tendency. And that kind of also grew my love of cinema and wanting to tell films that, or tell stories that are visual, where we can go to a location. I can almost try to curate the story I'm seeing in my head for other people. So that's kind of how I knew that playwriting was a kind of bonus, that I enjoyed it, but the aim was to get into writing for film. And then audio as well. I'd say audio is much closer to film than it is theatre or stage, because
really
you're having to take away one of the senses, which is visual.
Right.
But actually audio and audio sounds trigger a lot of visuals for us as human beings.
Yep.
When we hear certain sounds, certain songs, you might trigger a memory. You might remember the first time you heard that song. And so there's something about audio that really lends itself to writing visually. And also the great thing about writing for audio, unlike film, is that you can have any budget. Like, audio in some ways is budgetless. If you want 100 elephants in your scene, you can do it. So you can really push yourself and really take bold strides in writing when writing for audio, in a way that maybe you are limited in screen if you don't have the funding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the patchwork thing is interesting, because I sort of, it's like my life is, I have like 5 or 6 different jobs, right? So what, do you like that? Is it challenging?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it does come with its challenges, but I wouldn't have it any other way, because it keeps the work interesting. It means I get to meet so many different creators and collaborate in a way that I've never imagined before. And I think as well there is something particular, maybe slightly different to novel writing, right? That I get to hand my work over to a team, so the group expands.
Yeah.
And there's even more voices involved, more perspectives, more lenses on the shaping the story and trying to bring it to life. And I'm also really happy that sometimes some of the best ideas or moments in my work didn't come from me.
Oh, wow.
It came from the sound design, it came from set, it came from lighting, it came from the dramaturg, because I think I really enjoy collaborating with other people and hearing, well, okay, if I put this to you, what do you take from it, or what does it trigger for you? And is there something that we can do that meets in the middle of our imaginations?
So do you work on one project at a time, or are you oftentimes moving between projects?
Never. I wish I could work on, I can't afford to work on one project.
So you're always
at a
at the
time.
same thing, right? You're always doing lots of
there's
different things at once.
Lots of different things spinning at different times. And actually, I think to have a career, you need that.
Yeah.
That actually, yes, you might have a main thing, and that is your main project for several years, but you're writing lots of other things at different stages, or dreaming up new ideas, or sometimes it's really nice to be invited onto other people's projects, just to be another human sounding board. And sometimes that means that's also less pressure on me, because I'm not going to have to go write the thing. I'm just here to support that witer's journey.
It's nice when you get to do that. Yeah.
And you can also get paid to do that,
exactly.
which is great.
Yeah.
So, I really enjoy having a job that is very different and not monotonous. That I was never born for a kind of Monday to Friday 9 to 5. I will do the all-nighters if it means I have to hit a deadline, or which means working through the night and sleeping through the day. That actually I'm able to. One of the probably biggest benefits is that I'm able to work around my disability, because sadly in our very regimented capitalist world, there is no job that I could do that would have the level of flexibility that would allow me to work around having fluctuating health.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess it's almost time for me to ask you the final question. But before we do, I want to ask you one thing, because you said something you in the annotations in the text for us, you said something I thought was really interesting. So you were talking about how you want your characters to be specific, but that in a way it was almost as if the specificity helped provide the possibility for a sort of cross-identity connection. So the way you put it was that you really liked it when people, that is to say the audience, members of the audience, see themselves in or identify with characters who have nothing in common with them. And so that was like a really interesting, I don't know, can you talk a little bit about that? I thought that was like a really interesting idea.
Yeah, so I think it came from a conversation I had with someone where we are both disabled people, and a common thing we often talk about is that, which is a reality, and I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, but non-disabled people really struggle to see themselves in disabled characters and therefore in disabled people. And so a kind of maybe mini mission of mine in my work is often trying to get people to see beyond just the character traits of a person, beyond the physical things about them that there are. If you took the time to sit down with someone, you might discover after, and it may be in the first 5 minutes or or it may take 5 years to discover there are kind of ties between one and us in terms of our experiences, our lived experiences, or if not experiences, then interests that like with time you will eventually find common ground with someone. And so that's something I'm often really conscious of when telling stories and writing characters, because I can see myself in so many characters. I see myself in non-human characters. Right. It's so easy to do that, but there's something when it comes to disability, there's some kind of, and I say barrier, but I also think sometimes just a lack of imagination that people can't see beyond the disability, and therefore I can't relate because I'm not disabled. Yeah. And so in the play Sleepover, sometimes being really specific and in your details about a character is what opens it up. Yeah. And I think it sounds counterintuitive, right?
Yeah,
because usually
that's
people
what's cool about it.
Keep it broad, keep it general.
Yeah.
Milestones, all that kind of stuff is relatable. But I was like, well, let's try the opposite. That I think sometimes the specificities where you find the universality. And I really love, and that was some of the reactions that I got at the play of people in, much, much older than myself who aren't disabled, aren't of any ethnic minorities, being able to see themselves in these characters. Yeah. And I was like, yes, that's the goal, that it doesn't matter what someone looks like on the outside, we are all still human beings. Yeah. And then we will find, because we're all stuck on this planet, we can't leave, we will find commonalities eventually.
Yeah, you say that this really nice thing in the video where you talk about how one of the things you want people to think about is that there is no right way to exist in the world. And I thought that was just very, it's simple, but I thought very powerful, particularly because I think right now there's a lot of discourse, at least in America, that makes it sound like there is a right way, and it's trying to get people to behave in that. Anyway, so I thought that was really cool. So, okay, let me ask you the category question. So again, it is favorite, last, first, or never?
Let's go with favorite.
Oh, good. Okay, let's see. Where are the questions? Here we go. All right, there's two here, and I'll take the second one. Well, actually, maybe you've already answered this. So I'll just say, who is your favorite playwright, living or dead?
Oh, don't do that.
Okay, then I'll switch. It's fine. Totally fine. Totally fine. I'll ask you a different question. How about, you may have already answered this, but what's your favorite thing about live theater?
Sorry, say that again?
Your favorite thing about live theater.
Oh, about live theater. Okay, I can answer that one. Essentially, people trust it. So sometimes you'll go see theater where you don't know anyone involved. So I see a lot of work that because someone I know is involved in the production. But I also go see work where I don't know anyone involved. And I'm basing that on maybe just the poster of the play, my availability to go see the play during its run, and maybe a very snippet of a like log line of what the play is about. But I'm committing to book a ticket, to sit in a theatre that I may be familiar with, I may not be familiar with, in a dark room with complete strangers, and we've all kind of collectively agreed we're going to sit here and receive this story for however long it takes. And yes, some people walk out midway, but the ones that stay are, for me, it's a reminder of like there's this human curiosity of wanting to listen, wanting to learn, opening ourselves up to something different that I think can be sometimes lost or forgotten in our everyday life in the kind of political landscape that we're living in. And I think what I love about live theatre is that there is this humanness about us of like, let's all get together, even if I don't know everyone in the room, and let's receive what someone else is trying to share with us, teach us, signpost us, or illuminate to us about the world. And maybe we'll leave that theatre looking outside a little bit different. I think that's one of my favorite things about theatre when I've really been moved by something, is that the moment that we're out of the dark room, it's like I've put on new glasses. The world looks just a little bit different. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah. And now we are going to hear from Roy Williams. So Roy Williams began writing plays in 1990. His work has been performed at the National Theatre, the Royal Court Theatre, the Royal Shakespeare Company, among others. So I want to tell you a story. So when I was doing research on you and just looking there, I came across this. I was actually just looking for your bibliography, and so I came across this website that I think is maybe from a British company that licenses productions and things like this. And it described you, the first line of your bio is, Roy Williams began writing plays in 1990 and is now arguably one of the country's leading dramatists. And I was like, you don't have to say arguably, you can just say he is now one of the country's leading. It felt very British to me somehow that they felt the need to put arguably in there. So Roy Williams is one of the country's leading dramatists. That's what we'll start there. So I actually am going to ask you a question similar to the one to start, that I asked Matilda, which was, what kind of drew you to the theater? What was it about the theater that really drew you in and you found so captivating?
I think it's because when I was at school, I went through a phase when I wasn't the most well-behaved boy at school.
Okay.
And to the point where my family, particularly my mother and my sister, were very concerned. And they were right to be, because I think at the time, a lot of boys, particularly black boys in British schools, have been singled out by the teachers, saying you're nothing but trouble, you're this and that.
Right.
And but a lot of it was based on race, and a lot of the teachers were racist, and they certainly were in my school. And my mum was she was of the Windrush generation, so I think by then they realised just how what a problem there was with their children. So I was given a choice. Either I go to a Saturday school. There were Saturday schools set up in most communities in England.
Saturday schools where you would go to school on Saturdays?
You would go to school on Saturdays, and they would be run by West Indian communities.
Oh.
And where mostly black kids, particularly boys, would go.
Yeah.
And you go there until your grades picked up at school. So I had to go to one, and it was either that or be sent to live with relatives in Jamaica. My mum always scared me with stories about just how disciplined schools are in Jamaica. I mean, they are keen on punishment, corporal punishment.
Right.
And my mum was very much, if he steps out of line, whip him. Yeah, absolutely. And I thought, Mum,
Okay.
please. So I chose to go to Saturday
school.
And it was run by a man called Don Kinch. It was just in his flat in Holland Park, in his kitchen. We all sit around his table, myself and several other boys with similar stories to mine. And as well as that, he was also an actor, writer, director, and he co-ran a black theatre company at the time. So sometimes he had to go and rehearse on Saturdays. So I would tag along. And I sat in rooms, and I would sometimes make tea and coffee for the actors. I'd join in a warm-up sometimes and read in for actors who were running late or couldn't be there that
So you
day.
were already involved almost in production right from the start.
Yeah, and I loved it. I
Wow.
just loved being in their company. I mean, I think I was 11, 12 at the time, and they couldn't be old. I mean, when I look back on it now, they must have been in their 30s or late 20s, but they seemed like they seemed ageless to me, and they were like gods, and they
Oh,
were
really?
so funny as well, and very. But they also had a lot to say, just about in terms of how British and how black they felt in England at the time. And we were talking late 70s, early 80s, so that was right at the heart of Thatcherism, Margaret Thatcher,
Right.
whose policies didn't endear herself well to the black communities at the time.
Right.
So there was a lot of anger and a lot to say.
So were you, I hadn't thought about this, but were you, like a film like Babylon, do you know that?
Yeah, yes,
So was that a
yes.
film you were able to see then, or was that a film you only saw later?
I remember, because that was at the time when videos were
First
making
coming,
a big
yeah,
deal.
yeah.
And I remember
Yeah.
my brother got a copy of it.
Oh, he did, okay.
Watching it, and I remember watching it on video and feeling how excited I was about, wow, you can watch a film on TV, and that was in the cinema 2 years previously. Oh,
Right.
amazing. Yeah, I remember that very, very well.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So when did you decide, you love the theater? Did you think about being an actor, or how did you make the transition to writing?
I was an actor.
Oh, you were an actor? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
but I don't like to talk about it.
So why don't you like to talk about it?
I wasn't very good.
Oh, really? Okay.
And when the jobs I did get, I always found myself kind of siding up to the writers.
Oh,
I was kind of, I talked to them more than I talked to my fellow actors. And
Right.
I thought, I want to do what you're doing. I don't want to be on stage and do all this nonsense. And I think the sign for me was actually it's one of the biggest parts I ever got on television. But when I say biggest, it's still relatively very small.
Yeah.
It was. Do you remember House of Cards?
Yeah.
With Kevin
Yes,
Spacey?
yes.
I was in the British version.
Oh, you were in the British version.
The sequel. It was called To Play the King.
Okay.
And I remember I got the part, I auditioned, and it's very like, I played a boxer called Terry who goes to, there's a big dinner scene in number 10 Downing Street. And it was great because they picked me up and drove me all the way to the studios. I got my own dressing room,
Yeah.
got suits, and they did my, for Black Eye, and I got that, and I reread the script. And as I was reading it, the writer in me was thinking, you know what, if they jumped from page 31 to 36, completely skipping my scene, it would work. So I did it. I filmed it and went home. And then these are the days before emails. I got a very nice letter from the BBC. It had BBC on the letterhead saying, "Thank you, Roy. Unfortunately, the episode overran, so we're gonna have to cut your part." And when I watched it, it was exactly the cut I saw.
You knew that you had seen
so
it.
I was disappointed, but I kind of thought, yeah, I was right, and maybe there's something, maybe I can do writing.
I am fascinated by this. I teach writing here, and there's this essay I teach that it's a wonderful piece of writing, but it's this long sort of mix of kind of personal memoir and sort of idea-driven piece. And at the very end, in the last paragraph, there's this one sentence that every time I read the piece, I think, why, it's out of place, like it shouldn't be there. And it was very interesting. When I taught this to, I sometimes teach this great essay writing class we have here that is mainly for freshmen and sophomores and sort of advanced. And one of the things that was fascinating was when I taught it, that, 4 or 5 students in the class, and most of them have very little experience with reading, said, what's the deal with this sentence? And that always made me think, like, it's almost like there's some objective reality underneath of it, but the fact that you were able to see that structurally.
Yeah.
And so, had you already been writing plays before then, or?
Yeah, and just got a lot of rejections and stuff. And when I did that part, actually, I was in my second year of studying writing at Rosewood College.
Yeah.
And that was my final site, because I was still kind of holding on to acting. I said, maybe I can still do it.
Maybe you'll do it.
But when that experience happened to me, I said, right, that's it. I'm giving up completely. I'm going to focus on writing. Yeah, no, I got scores and scores of rejection letters. And the best rejection letter I got was from a regional theatre. I think it was Newcastle, up in North England. And they said, thank you, Roy. You've got a wonderful voice. You really, really have. But you need to see more theatre and read more plays.
Wow.
And that was the best advice I ever got, and that's exactly what I did. And that's
what you did?
That's why I applied for the writers course at Rose Bruford.
Right.
Because I had lazy bones at that time, and I just knew I had to be somewhere where I would see more theatre and read more plays.
Oh, so it essentially kind of forced you to focus it.
I needed to do it.
Well, actually, so that leads into this question that one of my colleagues wrote, which, when I read it, I was like, that's kind of a weird question. But then I thought I actually was interested in just what. So the question is literally, what is a play you wish you had written? which is a strange question, but I'm sort of wondering if that...
I think I don't really have one. I think there are plays I wish I would hurry up and finish. But the plays I wish I would write, I will come to them. It will take its time. It will take its time, but I know I will come to them. I mean, I'm never short of ideas. I mean, my brain is kind of like, it's like so many airplanes in the air, and you just know instinctively, okay, it's time for this one to land. And so there's so many of them. I mean, all the plays that run around in my head, those are the ones I wish I'd write. But I know I will. I know I will get to them in time, yeah.
So like Matilda, you have also written screenplays.
Yeah.
You've written screenplays for television and film, and then also radio. What's that experience like? I mean, do they inform you? Do the different disciplines inform each other?
Well, for film and TV, the money's better, so that's good.
Right.
It's still a story at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's still A, B, and C. You've got begin here, go there, and there, and so that's kind of how I treat it, really. I mean, I love film and TV. Possibly, maybe more film. I enjoy movies. I love going to the movies. That's a great experience for me.
Do you still go to the movies?
Oh yeah, I still go.
Awesome.
And I'm not a snob. I see everything.
You see everything.
Yeah, from the Marvels to the indies.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so in your Windham Campbell video, you talk about how athletes were the sort of your most visible role models.
Yeah.
But that you were hopeless at sports, as you say, basically.
I know,
so,
I was kind of, because I think at the time you, growing up as young and black in those days, a lot of stereotypes were associated with you. So it's assumed, it's expected to some people that if you're young and black, you must be good at sports.
You must be good at sports, yeah.
And I was just
what was that like? What was it like to be hopeless at sports?
Frustrating, because all my mates, particularly my black friends, were good at sports.
They were good at sports.
And I was the only one who I just couldn't get it together. Wow. And that was frustrating. That was, because that was the only thing I was told I could be. No one was telling me I could write.
Right.
No one said, no, you can do that, Roy. You can be a
right.
writer. No one was telling me that.
But then you found the Saturday school.
But then I found the Saturday school, and then I found my way, and so thankfully for that. But yeah, I mean, the black sporting figures were amazing. I mean, for a 10-year-old boy to see this beautiful black man on television saying, "I am the greatest."
Yeah.
That's what you want to hear.
Yeah.
It's what you want to hear. You just
yeah.
go, yeah, he said it.
Yeah.
He said it, and he believed it. And
that's yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
he did
was.
Believe it.
He was an idol to me.
Yeah.
Ali. Yeah, he really was. Yeah.
That's awesome. So I was going to ask you a question about the transformation of English football, but I'll leave that. Maybe I'll ask you afterwards or whatever. But in your but one of the things you talk about is that and in your plays, sports is a recurring theme, or at least sort of the subject you then use to it. And one of the things you talk about is the relationship between soccer, racism, nationalism, tribal identity, local identity is obviously incredibly complicated. You say in that video, you say you sometimes write characters that in real life you would probably maybe want to cross the street to avoid just because of how they might see you and the like that. What's that? Why do you want to write those characters? And then what is it like to write them and to think about them?
As much as I hate what they say, I suppose I can't help but feel fascinated by them. I just want to know what happened to you, who put those thoughts in your head, what books have you been reading that's made you think that it's appropriate to treat other people that way, and also just trying to understand where those politics come from. What's their life experience as well? Because I grew up in a pretty, I would say, even before multicultural and diversity became a word, I was living it in West London.
Right.
I grew up with white friends and Irish as well. I mean, I think a lot of West Indian communities had a lot of affinity with the Irish because when they arrived in England as well in the 50s, they faced those
Very
signs.
Similar,
no blacks, no Irish, no dogs.
Right.
So there's a kind of, so when someone kind of breaks away from that and thinks those ideals, I think it's just the way I was brought up. I just can't help but feel fascinated and interested in terms of why they are. And then, I try to combat it with as best as I can in my work with a debate, sort of saying, well, I think you're wrong, but tell me, give me.
Yeah, that's one of in the excerpt from your new forthcoming play, it's very interesting to see the characters kind of talking to each other in that way.
And I must admit, there is something fun, if that's the right word, of getting inside those people's heads,
I was wondering that,
and having them say what I would never say. I could never say,
Right.
and be offended by. But I felt it always feels like a challenge to me to get their voices right, and
To get it right.
get it right, and convey what they're saying.
Do you have people? How do you know if you've gotten it right?
What how people speak?
Yeah. No. Yeah.
I don't know. I base it on my own life's experiences,
Yeah.
my friends growing up. I mean, yes, I mean, I had a lot of white friends as well, but I remember a lot of their dads, their uncles,
Right.
and a lot of them, and how they spoke and how they meant to me. I lost count the amount of times I've heard them saying this and that about people of colour, and then they turn to me and say, "Oh, we don't mean you, Roy."
Yeah.
To me,
Yeah.
I mean, when I look
While
back
you
on
were
it
there,
now,
yeah.
that for me, that's even more offensive than the N word.
Yeah. So in the one of the things that's interesting about the excerpt is it opens with a journal entry of yours, and then it has the play, and there's some of what's in the journal entry is in one of your characters. Do you do that? Like things you've written down in a journal end up in the
Oh
voice
yeah,
of
I
a
mean,
character?
I devour notebooks.
Okay.
I eat my way, and it's all stuff written down and everything. And just to answer your question, what you said briefly, I remember I was writing a play at a Royal Court called Fallout, which is about kind of young kids getting involved in, just living the way they are, and it's centered around an infamous murder that happened in England, in London at the time. And but it was important for me to kind of get their lingo right, how they spoke.
Yeah.
Because I was 35 when I wrote it, and the kids that I was writing about, they were considerably younger than me. So, and then I told my brother Mark, my late brother Mark, who was a bus driver in London, and he said, "Hey, you want to know how kids talk now? Come get on my
Just
bus.
come ride the bus with me?
Ride the bus with me on the school run. You'll get all the research you need."
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so we have to go. So the last category, last question, this category: favorite, last, first, or never?
Firsts, please.
Okay, great. Yes. Oh, this is interesting. What was the first thing you read that you remember making you want to write? Do you remember that?
First thing I've read, I remember I wanted to write.
Like when you were a kid.
Oh.
Is there a book you read or a play you saw?
Alexander Dumas' The Three Musketeers. Wow. Yeah, that's the one I wanted to.
Really?
It was just great. I mean, it was just,
Yeah.
it's, for a boy reading about, young men with swords and fighting for honor, and I wanted to be D'Artagnan. I kind of liked his, he was kind of where I was, because as you know in the book, he wasn't a musketeer.
He's not a musketeer. Yeah.
He's not a musketeer. He
Yeah,
only becomes at the end,
yeah.
so he aspires to be.
Yeah.
So I shared his journey as
awesome.
much. So yeah, that was that one.
All right, great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks.